Look at police in Pontiac say 3 children were found living alone in deplorable conditions after discovering their mother had abandoned them for years. Our Victor Williams is following the story for us tonight. Victor, we're learning that mother has been arrested. What else can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right. The mother has been arrested, Pam, but we're told that these kids were actually inside of this house for years, at least since 2021. This is the house behind me that has that orange sticker right there on the window, but we're told these kids were only 12, 13, and 15. Now, authorities, they said that the mom would drop off food from time to time, but she's a 34-year-old woman that's now being held at the Oakland County Jail with a case now being turned over to the prosecutor for review. We are expecting charges to come in the next few days or so, but the only reason authorities ever stepped in the first place was because the landlord actually called 911. He contacted deputies after not hearing from the mother since about December, and that's what started this welfare check. Take a look at some of this video from inside of the place. We're told that the house was just so unsanitary that evidence techs, they had to wear hazmat suits in order to investigate. Now, we're talking about piles of garbage in rooms as high as 4 feet tall, human feces overflowing in the toilet, and then also the bathtubs. Apparently, they were living on that food that people would bring nearby. Even also, strangers would sometimes bring that food up to the door. Now, also, we are being told that the mother had not spoken to the 2 girls that were in there for years, but she would go and actually speak to the son from time to time. The kids were not in school. They actually spent their entire time at the home watching TV and then playing video games. The conditions in the house were so bad that the kids had to sleep on the floor, the boy had a mattress, and the girls had to sleep on pizza boxes. So we're actually going to go and hear from Sheriff Michael Bouchard on what these kids are now having to go through, as well as what they now have to bounce back from.
Our first focus is in trying to make sure these kids get what they need to begin the process of moving forward. The second very important part of this is, how did the 3 kids fall through the cracks so terribly? How did the community, relatives, the schools, no one knew to reach out to us? How did that happen? And so that's going to be a big part of what I've already directed our investigations to figure out.
Now, while all of this was going on inside of the house, we're told that they ended up finding the mother at a different location. And so we're going to have more on what residents living nearby, they have to say about this. That's coming up at 11 p.m. Victor Williams.
Early. I found out about this on my way into work this afternoon, and there are no words. This is absolutely horrific. This is by far, I think, one of the worst stories we've ever covered here at Fox 2. And I want to warn everybody out there that the details are very disturbing.
If you think about the horrific ads you see on TV to spur donations for animals that have been abused or are living in terrible conditions, multiply that by 10.
A horrible story of abuse and abandonment. Investigators say 3 kids were living in a condo on Lydia Lane in Pontiac for years, alone in horrific conditions.
There was garbage, trash piled 3 and 4 feet high, covered with feces all through the house. It doesn't look like the toilet or the bathtub had been usable or workable for quite some time, primarily because of the feces and trash. I don't think they had basic hygiene knowledge of what to do. They hadn't been given hygiene products for years, toothbrushes, etc.
A 15-year-old boy and 2 girls ages 12 and 13 in the House of Horrors since at least 2021, according to the Oakland County Sheriff's Office. Their mother or someone else would leave prepared food on the porch once a week.
They had basically been locked in the house without any kind of guidance or basic hygiene or any kind of education for years.
The kids were discovered Friday. The landlord called police and asked them to do a welfare check because he had not heard from the mother since December.
We went to the house to check on what was going on there, and had no idea that there were kids there, let alone kids in grave situation.
Their 34-year-old mother arrested and being held at the Oakland County Jail. The children taken to an area hospital and are now in the care of a family member.
We showed up at the house. The young boy did have communication with the mom and said the police were there, and she said hide. When we took the kids out of the house, they had difficulty walking because their toenails were so long. They hadn't had any grooming. Incredibly disheveled and unkempt, hair very matted, filthy.
Authorities trying to figure out how this abuse went on for so long without anyone knowing about it.
It's pretty heartbreaking that the kids would have to live under those conditions. People just kind of get in their car and go. Another of my neighbors, we were just talking today, and she said to me, she said, look at all this snow. I don't see anybody out helping each other, shovel each other's snow. So I think people are just kind of just doing their own thing now and just kind of going in their places and closing the doors.
It's still just so incredibly hard to believe that these kids were in this condo for so many years, never seeing the sunlight, never trying to leave. They were apparently spending their time watching TV and playing games, not in school. We know that they had been enrolled in Pontiac schools years ago, but what happened? Why did they fall through the cracks? And it just, I mean, it's mind-boggling that the girls that we talked about, ages 12 and 13, the sheriff says they were sleeping on pizza boxes, old pizza boxes. A lot more to come on this story, but just absolutely heartbreaking.